Let's bring in Larry Sabato, Director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. Great to have somebody with your expertise, your knowledge of history, and of course recent polling, Larry, to talk about what is transpiring today. Your initial reaction to the Romney event today and the impact it will have on Donald Trump and beyond.
Jenna, here's what's going on. The establishment wing of the Republican Party, and some others not in the establishment wing that just opposed Trump, somehow awakened recently to the fact that Donald Trump might be the Republican nominee. And they've decided that it's going to be very difficult to defeat him during the primary season. But what they need to do is to keep him below the magic number of 1,237 delegates that you need to be nominated, and therefore go to a contested convention. The Romney speech today, as I understand it, is the first of a number of broadsides by a number of people that will occur between now and March 15th. Why March 15th? They think that's the key date to either deter Trump from getting the nomination or to recognize that it's inevitable. That's the day that winner-take-all begins. They want to see Marco Rubio win Florida. They want to see John Kasich win Ohio. And they're hoping to stop Trump in some of the other states like Illinois and Missouri and North Carolina. Who knows whether they can, but that's what to expect, I think, as we move toward March 15th, which really could be D-Day for this campaign. And I don't mean Donald necessarily.
Well, he might think that, though. What do you think?
He might.
What do you think is the impact? That was a great map out of the strategy, as you understand it, for the next 2 weeks. But the impact of today's speech, do you think it will move the needle at all, either in favor of or perhaps not of Donald Trump?
There's no way that Mitt Romney, coming out in the way that he's going to, will convince Donald Trump's supporters and backers to move away. I just don't believe it. Now, what Romney can do, and probably will do, is to galvanize the anti-Trump portion of the party. Here's the problem, though. Unless he surprises us and endorses a candidate, that isn't in the formal speech, but right, he could always add a line or two. If he endorses somebody, then perhaps that galvanizes the anti-Trump forces to move toward that candidate. Although I don't see any indication that Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, or for that matter, even John Kasich, will move out of the race at this particular point in time.
And of course, there's the question about how much do endorsements really matter? How much have they mattered in the past few weeks, and how much will they matter going forward? Interestingly enough, Larry, I was looking back on the RNC autopsy report. That's what it was referred to casually, when it was released almost 3 years ago to the day, ironically, about what the party, the establishment, as some say, what their reflections were after losing in 2012. And this particular line, and by the way, this report was written by many of those who now are very publicly critical of Donald Trump. In this report on page 45, they talk about voters making the best choices and that outside groups and activists should not make choices for voters. This recommendation caught my eye, saying, quote, what do you think the message is to voters today of the party? Well, I'm sorry, Washington should not try to dictate candidate choices. Voters will ultimately decide. Washington should not try to dictate candidate choices. Voters will ultimately decide. What do you think about that recommendation and the risk now that the party is in if they are looking like they're against what voters want?
Yes, do what we say, not what we do. Of course, that's true for all of us when we lecture. And remember, politicians can turn on a dime. Hypocrisy is the lifeblood of politics. I'm not calling Mitt Romney a hypocrite. I think he's a terrific American. He's done a lot of great things and all the rest of it. But he welcomed Donald Trump's endorsement in 2012 and said a lot of great things about him. And now, of course, it's a very different story. Nothing wrong with that. The conditions of politics change. But the truth is that in this particular year, the Republican activists, the grassroots, seem particularly unlikely to listen to advice coming from those at the top, whether they're at the top in Washington or at the top of their states or localities.
So one of the things that Mitt Romney, we expect him to say, is to talk a little bit about who can beat Hillary Clinton, or at least give his thoughts, which is anybody but Trump. That seems to be the theme. Donald Trump came out this morning and said, "I'm the only one who can beat Hillary Clinton. I am not a Mitt Romney who doesn't know how to win. Hillary wants no part of Trump." I'm curious, you're taking a look at polling, though, Larry, and whether or not Donald Trump has a point. Is he the only one who can beat Hillary Clinton according to the numbers now? What do the numbers show us about a potential matchup between the two?
Well, it depends on the poll. Let's use polling averages. On the polling averages, actually, Clinton does better against Trump than she does against Rubio or even Cruz. And Kasich, I haven't seen that much data on him, so I can't comment there. But no, that's not what the polling shows. But I also have to say this. It's early March. Now, how accurate were those polls last summer in projecting the fact that Donald Trump would be the front runner? Okay? I don't think polls about early November taken in March tell us anything at all, and the world will turn over many times between now and then.
So moving ahead past this speech, Larry, what are you watching for? We're all going to be watching together. What are you really going to be watching for besides an added line for an endorsement or an announcement to enter the race, which we don't expect, but you never know, as you point out. Those lines just sort of slip in there. What are you going to be watching for during this speech?
Oh, I'm gonna quote my wonderful late grandmother. She had a great saying. She used it a lot. Talk is cheap, but it takes money to ride the train. So a lot of people are going to be talking against Donald Trump, but how many people are going to put up how many millions to not just advertise, but also organize on the ground to get out the vote against him? I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying, you know, in the end, it's not what people say, it's what they do. And in politics, what they do depends on the finances they have to do it with.
It'll be interesting to see. We're hearing murmurs of all this, but as you mentioned, where's the action? And we'll see where the action will be. Larry, great to have your observations. We appreciate it. Great advice from your mom as well. She's welcome on our show anytime.
Thank you.